Who wants to make a deal? According to Chris Haynes, the Lakers and the Nets are working on a trade for Kyrie Irving and Russell Westbrook. Meanwhile, we're still on hold waiting for a trade for Kevin Durant, the two-time Finals MVP. Broke his silence today via Twitter. It's the first time we've heard from him since he reportedly requested a trade from the Nets. This is what KD had to say, quote, "The ones who were locked in that gym with me know what it is. They know what I'm about. If you haven't been in there with me, ask around." Well, could the Nets provide the fireworks this July 4th weekend? Welcome to Free Agent Fever. Chris Smiles here with GA and former GM Ryan McDonough. So, Ryan, let's start off with the Nets, right? Logistically, how does this trade work for Westbrook and Kyrie? And which team is in the driver's seat right now trying to make this happen?
It doesn't work player for player, Chris, so there need to be more pieces involved. The Brooklyn Nets will send out some more salary in the deal. So it seems like one of the sticking points, according to our Chris Haynes, is the inclusion from Brooklyn of Joe Harris or Seth Curry. It seems like the Lakers would prefer to get Seth Curry back. He's on an expiring contract. Joe Harris, who's coming off ankle surgery, has 2 years left on his deal. So that is the dance. And you see some of the options there. In addition to Russell Westbrook, the Nets could receive Talen Horton-Tucker or Kendrick Nunn. That works, as well as draft picks, swaps, things like that. So these teams will go back and forth. GA, we were talking about this before the show. It seems like outside of the Lakers and Nets, there's probably a limited market for Westbrook and Kyrie. So I'll be interested to see if these two teams are able to work out a deal.
Yeah.
So, GA, in kind of what he's saying there, it seems like if a deal is done, it's going to be between these two teams. So who is getting the better end of the deal as it's presented?
Well, I think the Lakers have to feel good about getting Kyrie, and it's not necessarily just because of the talent, but fit-wise, because Kyrie's ability to shoot the basketball. That's the one area of concern, the big area of concern from an offensive standpoint for the Lakers from last season. They just didn't have a team that shot the ball well, and he gives you not only the shot making, but he's a guy that can space the floor, he can spread the floor. So I think that helps. And then if you do end up with Joe Harris, again, another guy that can shoot. So I think that's good for them. But I think Russell Westbrook's going to have a bounce-back year. I think he's going to have a solid year. But it also, if you're looking at it from Brooklyn's standpoint, you're going to come off his salary. You know, they're gonna be able to relieve themselves of that $48 million number. And for a team that, in essence, maybe they don't want to go into complete rebuild mode, but they do want to have some flexibility moving forward. And he probably gives them that. And there's always the possibility that he could re-sign there. Now, they're going to have issues, as Ryan was talking about before we came on the air. Now they go to being a team that doesn't have anybody that can shoot, because they're going to have Westbrook and Ben Simmons on the floor at the same time. Those are your two primary ball handlers. And in today's game, it is really hard to be competitive when your two primary ball handlers can't shoot the basketball or aren't consistent from that area. So there's still going to be some concerns no matter how you slice this from Brooklyn's perspective. But Brooklyn's the one that has more issues right now, because they not only got to figure this out, but obviously that 800-pound gorilla in the room with Kevin Durant.
Yeah, certainly going to have the Bleacher Report app, the alerts on for Chris Haynes' tweets overnight to make sure that if anything happens with Kyrie Irving and Russell Westbrook, we know he'll be on top of that. But the biggest fish out there, Kevin Durant. It's been, a couple of days since the official, I want to be traded news came out from Kevin Durant, but it hasn't happened yet. Are the Nets asking for too much? There are not enough teams with enough to offer? Why is it taking so long?
I think a number of reasons, Chris. Keep in mind, Kevin Durant is now on day 2 of a 4-year contract. So they have plenty of time to trade him.
Day 2.
They're in no rush to trade him. And that's interesting as it relates to what we were just discussing with Kyrie Irving and the LA Lakers. There are some scenarios in which it makes sense to trade Kevin Durant first and then see what you get back in return before making a decision on Kyrie. Or if the Nets have just made up their mind that they don't want Kyrie regardless, so whether KD's on the roster, they could deal him first. So there are a lot of scenarios here at play. And Chris, I think the price that Brooklyn wants back in return for KD went up yesterday because of what the Utah Jazz got for Rudy Gobert. That was a tremendous haul. Kevin Durant's a better player. He's on a 4-year deal. deal. So we're talking about maybe an unprecedented haul in terms of veteran players, draft picks, pick swaps, all kinds of things. That's what the Brooklyn Nets are asking for, and that's what they should get, given how good Kevin Durant is.
So you're saying today's price is not yesterday's price. I understand what you're saying, but looking at what Kevin Durant provides, and you're thinking, if you're the Nets, like, hold on. You came off this Achilles injury. Here's $40 million to get better. Now you come back, you have 2 amazing seasons with us. We're going to invest $200 million more in you. And like you said, 2 days into this extension, you want out. Is it a possibility the Nets are like, look, we can't make this happen. You have to play with us going forward, and he remains in a Brooklyn uniform?
No, I don't think there's any scenario. And I've heard the conversations, and I can understand why some would think that, they can play hardball in this situation. But the reality is this. He's too good a player, and it would be too big a distraction to have a season where he isn't playing. I just don't think, even from the league's perspective, that you would want to have that scenario play out that way. And I also say that I think it makes more sense to move Kyrie first because now you have a better sense of what you're going to be dealing with and what your needs are going to be in long term. Because when you look at Durant's deal is a long-term deal for the Brooklyn Nets as well, whereas Kyrie is a short-term. They're both on one-year deals, and they're not going to get a lot back for him, whereas with Durant, that could be franchise-altering. So I think they probably want to take a little bit more time. And the reality is also they don't have as many teams that are going to be able to participate in a Durant trade, partly because the reality is no one's going to want to take back a guy that they're going to have to pay that much money that doesn't want to be there. I do think that's going to play a role in all of this as well. And so the teams that he's interested in, I think the Nets, if they're smart, they're going to give those teams some time to see if they can make the deal work. Can have a win-win in this. So that drama could play out a little bit longer. It's unfortunate, but, think about it. We're not even talking about the fiasco that happened with James Harden. Like, that deal probably far more negatively impacted the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets gave up. They don't have a first-round pick for 5 years?
5 years, no picks with the picks.
None of them are protected. Like, they put themselves in a really difficult position, which I understood to a certain degree in the beginning if you had that group together. But think about it. It wasn't even a half season ago where you had Harden, Durant, and Kyrie. Now you probably don't have any of them.
And what you're saying is no way that the Brooklyn Nets and Sean Marks go into tank mode because there's nothing to benefit from that. This deal, it seems as if, according to all the reports, we want Devin Booker from the Suns. We want Bam Adebayo from the Heat. They want an all-star at minimum in return.
Yeah, but because of some complicated CBA rules, Bam Adebayo and Devin Booker can't be in the deal. Actually, Devin for multiple reasons, given that he just signed the extension as well, with Ben Simmons on the roster. There are some scenarios that aren't getting a lot of discussion in which the Nets would trade out both Kevin Durant and Ben Simmons. In that case, they could receive a player like Bam Adebayo back from the Miami Heat. That would obviously be a mega package. But I think what Greg was talking about earlier is kind of what Brooklyn will do. They'll take their time, and they will try to bid up Phoenix and Miami and New Orleans and Toronto and every team that's interested and keep, raising it a little bit. Off-season trades are different as an executive, especially when you're talking about a generational superstar in his prime. Training camp doesn't start until October. The games don't start till close to Halloween. So if you're Brooklyn, especially what we were discussing earlier with the lack of draft picks and the pick swaps, you have to get it right. And it can't be just for some young prospects and things in the future because you don't want to give one of the top picks in the draft to the Houston Rockets over the next few years.
You mentioned Rudy Gobert a little bit earlier, and if you look at the Jazz moves, they seem to be in a bit of a rebuild mode. We can't exactly pinpoint what's happening with them. That they hire a new head coach, Will Hardy, that's the same age as one of their guards, and Mike Conley at 34 years young, right? Then they trade away all-star center Rudy Gobert. They also move Royce O'Neal. So is Donovan Mitchell next, or are they rebuilding around Donovan Mitchell?
I think it's likely the latter, Chris. They're likely to keep Donovan Mitchell. They gave themselves a lot more flexibility and optionality with the trade they made yesterday with Minnesota, with Rudy Gobert going out. They had an unprecedented haul of draft picks and young players like Walker Kessler coming back in return. They also got veteran guys who can play. Patrick Beverley in that deal, Malik Beasley as well. So they can either put those guys on the floor around Donovan next year, maybe use some of that draft capital to upgrade their roster.